Will the Toronto Blue Jays make sense as a trade partner for Luis Robert Jr.? Let's discuss next on Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert of SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the FanSided Network. And also, I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And also follow or subscribe to the show at wherever you get your podcasts. Well, I've read it twice now that the Blue Jays might make sense as a trade partner for Luis Robert Jr., so let's discuss how they match up for possibly sending back something significant in the first segment. Then, Baseball America had a free article out about scouting in the industry, and it's not viewing the White Sox too kindly when it comes to evaluating talent. And finally, let's discuss if we might see Yoan Moncada on the South Side. For big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So if Luis Robert Jr. goes to Toronto before the season starts, then I truly believe the front office is motivated by fear that he's going to get hurt this season. It's going to be a long-term injury, and then they're going to have to pay his $2 million buyout and lose him for absolutely nothing. Because trading with Toronto, they're not the ideal trade. They're not the ideal trade partner. Their farm system is consistently ranked in the bottom 10. Two of their top five prospects come with major issues. And although the Blue Jays might be desperate enough to make a big move, and yes, LRJ still sort of qualifies since he did make an all-star team in 2023, since he's still viewed as a great talent, and since he's still viewed as a value player based on what he can do defensively and the fact that he's only going to be making $55 million over the next 3 seasons, with only 40 of that being optional, the Blue Jays might turn to Luis Robert Jr. if they strike out on trying to sign Anthony Santander, and they might be willing to meet the significant costs, as that's what it's rumored to get Luis Robert Jr. The White Sox just want something significant back, is what the reports are. They might be able to be willing to pay that cost. But first, let's go over the speculation rationale. And then let's go over the Blue Jays farm system rankings and then what might possibly even be a something significant offer and whether that's actually appealing or not. So first, Fansided's Jacob Mounts, he suggested the idea back in December. And here's what he wrote. If the Blue Jays lineup is going to be transformed drastically in one move, their best bet seems to be Luis Robert Jr. When healthy, Robert has displayed true 5-tool player potential, though a healthy season has unfortunately been very elusive for the White Sox slugger. Robert hit a .338 average in 2021, 275 at-bats, swatted 38 home runs in his only healthy year of 2023, stole 23 bases in 26 attempts in a non-injury hampered 2024, and won a Gold Glove in 2020. The talent is clearly there. We just don't get to see it very often. So that's kind of what he puts in there. And then he adds, Robert put up a slash line of 224, 278, 379 with 14 home runs through 393 at-bats in 2024. The clear risk is Robert's injury-riddled track record. In addition, the Toronto farm system is rather shallow, with one prospect in the top 100. The bidding for Robert is very competitive, but if the Blue Jays can muster enough talent, they might land a game-changing player. Robert is under club control through 2027 and is slated to make $55 million in that time if his 2 club options are exercised. And then Newsweek and SI's Zach Presnell, he floated this out. The Toronto Blue Jays have routinely been one of the top teams in a lot of different free agent sweepstakes over the last 2 years. Toronto was competitive in the Shohei Ohtani and Juan Soto sweepstakes, as well as being close to landing Max Fried, Corbin Burns, and plenty other top talent. But they keep coming up short every time. This winter, they whiffed on Soto and then tried to pivot to Teoscar Hernandez. Hernandez resigned with the Los Angeles Dodgers, and the Blue Jays are once again empty-handed. After whiffing on Soto and Hernandez, it appears the Blue Jays have their sights set on free agent outfielder Anthony Santander. Santander is coming off a year in which he slugged 44 home runs and is reportedly looking for $100 million in free agency. So what happens if Toronto misses on him too? The next and likely final option for the Blue Jays is Chicago White Sox outfielder Luis Robert Jr. Robert makes a lot of sense for the Blue Jays because he's young, affordable, and has enough potential to slug 40 home runs and steal 40 bases in a season. So basically I'll just skip a couple paragraphs ahead. And this is where, it really does kind of make sense. For Toronto, it's less about fit and more about desperation at this point. The New York Yankees, Baltimore Orioles are World Series contenders. The Boston Red Sox have one of the best young cores in the game. If the Blue Jays don't make a move to compete, they will be left in the basement of the American League East. So you can kind of see that they're kind of desperate. They don't want to be passed by the by the Tampa Bay Rays. Even though the Tampa Bay Rays always seem to be, they'll come out of nowhere. Boston, yes, they got Garrett Crochet. They've made some moves, but, Boston tends to disappoint lately. So, Toronto might be seeing this as an opportunity to at least get into third place. And usually if you get into third place in the AL East, that gives you a chance to be a wild card. Also, when you look at their depth chart on FanGraphs, you got George Springer in right, who's getting older by the day, Nathan Lukes in center, and Joey Loperfido in left, with Davis Schneider and Jonathan Clace. They're coming off the bench. So obviously you can see why the Blue Jays are trying to upgrade their outfield. Plus the club control over Bo Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is running out after the season. They're both set to be free agents after the year. And there's talk of Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Vladimir Guerrero Jr. potentially getting a bigger deal than Juan Soto. Although the Jays, they do have enough cash. People forget that Toronto is actually a big market, even though it's in Canada. And they do have some deep-pocketed owners. So they could afford to even bring back both. But there's a chance that they are going to lose a bidding war because the Blue Jays always lose a bidding war. The White Sox, the Giants, and the Blue Jays. Those three could commiserate for days about how they always come up short in bidding wars. So it makes sense for them to potentially pivot to Luis Robert Jr. if they do not get Anthony Santander. But in terms of a trade partner, they're not exactly ideal. The Jays have just one player again in the MLB Pipeline's top 100. Their top prospect overall pitcher, Trey Yasavage, checks in at number 94. And I don't think he's getting traded anytime soon, considering he was their number one draft pick in 2024. Unlike Boston, the Blue Jays just don't have enough depth in their system to absorb already trading their most recent first-round pick. Because you could say, well, Boston gave up Brady Montgomery in the Garrett Crochet deal. Yeah, Brady Montgomery was their sixth-ranked prospect. Roman Anthony is a top 5 prospect in all of baseball. They have plenty, Marcelo Mayer, Christian Campbell. They had plenty of depth, and they could deal from a position of strength. The Blue Jays just do not have that position of strength. Their number 2 prospect, Orvelis Martinez, he was suspended 80 games for PED use. Their number 4 prospect, pitcher Ricky Tideman, just went down with elbow surgery, and he was terrible before he went down without elbow surgery. He had a tough season. And when you look at the Jays system, it ranks as follows. Number 23, according to FanGraphs, and their top 3 prospects only reaching their 50 grade value. Number 24, according to MLB Pipeline's last rankings back in August. Number 22, when ESPN's Kylie McDaniel last did his rankings in August. And number 27, according to Bleacher Report's Joel Reuter's final rankings of 2024. Now, if I remember correctly, Arjan Nemalaya, I believe I butchered his name, but he's one of the first. I think he's one of the first Indian-born prospects to get drafted because he came over to the United States. He was a player I remember the White Sox liked a lot in the 2023 draft. I believe he was one of the players that the team was tied to when they were drafting at number 16, and then they took Jacob Gonzalez instead. He is the Blue Jays' 5th-ranked prospect according to MLB Pipeline, but number 1 according to Reuter. But I doubt the Blue Jays part with him in a deal with Luis Robert Jr. Number 1, because, for example, like Reuter ranks him as their only tier 1 type value prospect. That's an elite player potential. Also, while things didn't go for well in terms of average, he only hit 232 at single A. He did have a 789 OPS and 16 home runs. Plus, he's 19. So I doubt they give up on him considering what the club invested in him. This isn't a 19 international free agent that they signed for like $30,000 that they can be like, here's a scratch off. This is a 19-year-old first-round pick. So I doubt they're giving him up. Not sure the Blue Jays deal their number 6 prospect, Cal Steven, considering they just drafted him in the second round. He's a pitcher that they just drafted, so I don't think they're drafting him. So you can pretty much scratch off 1 through 6 Cross them off the list. Now, you might be able to start a deal once you get to their number 7 prospect, Charles McAdoo. They got him in a deal from Pittsburgh. He's a third baseman outfielder. He was actually a nice find for the Pirates before they traded him, as he was picked in the 13th round. 22-year-old right-handed bat that hit 16 home runs across A-ball and double-A ball. Had a 976 OPS at A-ball, then 837 when he got promoted to double-A. Just didn't do so well when he got to the Jays double-A team with a 610 OPS in 37 games. But the scouting report, this is what it reads, according to MLB Pipeline. A big, strong right-handed hitter, McAdoo surprised evaluators with his overall feel for hitting and his ability to impact the baseball. He's shown that he can handle velocity and routinely turns in quality at bats with a patient approach and limited chase. That's allowed him to consistently find the barrel and drive the ball with above-average exit velocities, and he could grow into average power eventually. Mostly a second baseman in college, McAdoo has good hands and decent arm strength that gives him the chance to stick on the dirt, and he exceeded expectations at third this season. He likely is better suited for first or corner outfield spot when all is said and done, but it's his bat that has helped him raise his profile. So you got an ascending prospect that maybe the Blue Jays might be like, well, we didn't technically draft him. We liked him enough to trade for him. But, let's get him. And then shortstop Josh Kasevich. He checks in at number 9, and he fits a lot of boxes the Sox like in terms of when the scouting report says he's a good clubhouse guy, strong worker, gets on base. But I do think if you're going to go lower down the rankings, the Jays also might have to throw in a couple scratch-off pitching prospects, and they have those in bunches. And as Kylie McDaniel said on the White Sox Talk podcast, excuse me there, he basically said when you're projecting trades, a lot of teams have the same formula. They assign actually a dollar value to each player based on what they're doing. And then you got to figure out how those prospects meet up based in terms of dollar value too, based on like their grades, that type of stuff. It's kind of why do you think Fangraphs, when you look at their rankings, it's all like their farm system rankings, it's all in dollars. And if you get like a 70 value, like that's a great potential prospect that has a certain dollar value. So depending on the system. But when you look at the Blue Jays, again, their dollar value and the White Sox obviously are still, it sounds like, valuing Luis Robert Jr. very, very highly because of his talent. But they understand that, obviously his trade value is at its lowest and they're willing to take to something significant, but, so a haircut on it, but they're still probably going to want something, like McAdoo and Kasevich, and then probably, I would say, another pitching prospect. Would the Blue Jays want to give up 3 players for ideally probably somebody that you probably only give up maybe 2 players for, or even 4 players? Maybe you got to give up a couple scratch-offs because they're that desperate. And again, as I've talked on previous episodes, I would still prefer the Reds to get interested again because they could easily give up one of their top 5 prospects, especially their 3 position players who are all at single A ball and just not bat an eye because they can move on because they, at least have those guys that are just complete unknowns, but still high potential. The Phillies too, they could come in and pull off a deal. They have a lot of more high ceiling guys. Where like McAdoo, yeah, he's got the potential, it's trending that way, but on the other end, he's looking like he just might be an average, decent player. And do you want to just get an average, decent player for Luis Robert Jr. back? I just think that the Phillies and the Reds provide that potential to really get something actually that is truly significant back. Although, according to the scouting industry, the White Sox are considered the worst at identifying talent. I'll discuss the Baseball America survey that got the White Sox Twitter in an uproar, and I'll discuss that next on Locked On White Sox. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories recently was taking my daughter to the Brewers and White Sox game. She loved eating ice cream, going to the kids area, and she did love the baseball. Well, mostly she loved the ice cream in the kids area, but it was just fun to spend a day with my little girl at the ballpark. And if you love going to live events, I recommend using the Gametime app. Now, Gametime has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Gametime Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And I'm always checking out the Gametime app for deals to my beloved Marquette Hoops. I'm always trying to convince my wife to buy tickets to go see my alma mater, especially tonight's game against Georgetown. I've seen tickets for as low as $1. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today, because what time is it? Game time. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms, so make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. So Baseball America did a survey of scouts, and one question they asked is, which team is the worst at identifying talent? And 24 scouts in the survey ranked the White Sox at the, 24 scouts ranked the White Sox at the top, with 12 giving them, obviously, a first place vote or putting them on their list. As for those that are watching on YouTube, you can see kind of how it breaks down. You got the Athletics just a little bit behind them at 46%, with 11 votes. The Angels and the Marlins, 38%. You got the Rockies, Blue Jays. Again, do you really want to be trading them with the Blue Jays if they're in the same company in the Sox in terms of top five? Which is weird. You got the Guardians, Cubs, Nationals, and Red Sox and all that stuff. So I saw that screenshot getting shared a lot on social media, especially on Sox social media. First, tell me something I don't know. Yes, we know the White Sox are not very good at identifying talent. They just lost a record-setting 121 games. You don't get to that record without being really bad at identifying talent. But also, the context is, before you do a facepalm, remember, they're still trying to sift out through the rubble of the mess of a farm system left behind by Kenny Williams and Rick Hahn. Although, with an asterisk, a farm system that current GM Chris Getz was still supposed to develop, because remember, he was in charge of player development. But instead of going like that, just more, and again, your cynicism is warranted when it comes to the White Sox, but instead of having some cynicism, might I suggest using this as a data point? Also, I think it's more of a reflection of the team's inability to develop talent. Well, at least outside of pitching, because they've been pretty decent at developing pitching. But this piece that Baseball America had a great quote when it came to identifying team, when they surveyed teams that identify talent, that are good at identifying talent. This is what, why you got to put the context. And as I always say, context matters. Make context matter again. Okay, let's stop with the hot takes all the time. Here's what Baseball America had. One scout mentioned, it's difficult to give accurate credit for talent identification since player development plays a key role. Quote, hard to say as some players get to MLB in some organizations, but would be behind an MLB stud in another organization while being developed and have to switch positions. Player development has a lot to do with taking identified talent and molding it, end quote. Right there. So obviously, yes, the White Sox do deserve that designation if the scouts were coming from the perspective of they just can't develop talent. Because, the Sox have been terrible, especially, at least when it comes to hitters. Pitching, yes, your cynicism might say, well, they can't ever develop. Garrett Crochet, they developed, okay? Dylan Cease, yes, they did develop. They've had some misses, obviously, but they've been okay when it comes to pitching. Even Ronaldo Lopez, they did develop him into at least a decent reliever. But here's the thing. I just mentioned Dylan Cease and Ronaldo Lopez because what the Sox have been really good at is identifying talent other teams have already identified. I mean, look at the Dylan Cease return. Got Drew Thorpe and Jairo Iriarte. The Crochet deal for now looks promising. Heck, Edgar Carroll came from the Angels. So they're okay at already looking at what teams identify and be like, well, we'll trade for that. But again, they have to usually give up guys that they've actually developed to get those guys because overall they're so bad at developing talent. I mean, think about it. The last hitter that you could say that, at least the last second round draft pick that they actually got to the big leagues was Gavin Sheets. Gavin Sheets just got non-tendered. And I don't see anybody rushing to sign him. But again, let's circle back to using this as a data point because I think it's huge. Right now, this offseason has been really about more front office overall. It really has. The international scouting department has been completely redone. The R&D has been completely upgraded. and renamed R&D. Obviously Chris Getz is trying to make this a modern front office. And as, I shared on the graphic, it says a number of clubs got more detailed feedback in this category, blah, 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 blah. One scout who viewed the White Sox and the Nationals as being way behind the times, basically. And that's what Chris Getz is trying to do. He's trying to drag a team that was basically operating as if it was still 2005 into 2025 baseball. So if this survey comes out and say 2027 or 2028 and the Sox are still leading it, then facepalm, obviously. The cynicism still warranted. Obviously. But right now, tell me something I don't know. Guess what? The sky is blue, and the White Sox don't develop talent, at least hitters, very well. And also, the thing that's getting missed when it gets shared on social media world is the tone of the survey overall read between, like, if you read the comments, because it's free on Baseball America, when you read the comments, it still sounds like a battle between Moneyball and Trouble with the Curve. Those two movies that kind of came out back to back. What was it? 2 decades ago or last decade? I mean, read some of the comments. You can definitely tell who the crotchety, angry, crusty old veterans responded. And then you can tell who the new age guys are. And they did point out that morale is very, very low in the scouting world to begin with, because it's a position, a lot of positions that are getting cut. And that's where I was actually more fascinated with this piece, is it really gives an insight into what front offices are doing. And I wonder where the Sox are headed. So here's a few snippets I wanted to share. The 2024-25 offseason has been more brutal than many scouts can remember. The scouting industry has faced challenges in recent years because of new technology, new data, and less reliance on in-person evaluations in the upper minors and college baseball. While nothing in particular is new this offseason, the acute fear scouts are feeling in the wake of job cuts and turnover throughout the industry feels like something more than typical. While scouting ranks at the pro level have been thinned out for years, many teams have begun cutting back cross-checking roles at the amateur level as well. At least 3 large market teams this offseason have cut back on cross-checker roles, typically veteran scouting at positions with regional and national geographic coverage responsibilities who provide second opinions on priority players from area scouts. Some model-reliant clubs have moved on or significantly cut back on those roles in previous years. Others this offseason aren't even bothering to fill positions after a veteran scout leaves for a job for another team, creating concerns about career advancement opportunities from younger scouts. At the same time, many veteran scouts believe teams are increasingly happy to cut costs by hiring younger and cheaper scouts for roles that are viewed as, quote, low-level information gathering, end quote, jobs at the expense of proven scouts with developed track record evaluating talent. And I know the Cubs, they've cut back on their scouting. That was detailed, I believe, in The Athletic in September. But call me old school, I do hope the Sox keep eyes and boots on the ground with a catch, at least for high school, JUCO, and international scouting. Because, I kind of see where teams are going, because it's not even models. Pretty much every Division I baseball game now is on TV. You can grab a video feed from those. I mean, ESPN Plus, you get practically every conference this game now. Also, AAA, all the games are broadcasted now. You have your guys. You can also get tape, study tape. So maybe you hire a few guys that just study tape. And then I would just have scouts in place just watching those games, hire some consultants. That's what you could actually do. Heck, Don Cooper sitting around on his couch at home. Hey, can you watch this pitcher, this college pitcher we're interested? Take some notes. There's nothing wrong with getting some actual extra feedback, but you don't actually have to send somebody to these games anymore, at least for college and even AAA, because there's a video feed. Yes, there's something to be said with the actual eye test, and you can get your own radar gun and that. And that's where, you might want to need a cross-checker, but I would have my cross-checkers be more, work smarter, not harder. If there's some guys that we like, if I was an owner or if I was in charge of a front office, I would send my cross-checker out towards the end to just get to know a college kid. But otherwise, colleges also are keeping track of their stats a lot better than, say, high schools and international. That's where obviously you still need those eyes on there, because those are still projections. And you might want to watch those guys. You might want to watch them more than one time. Like what Kenny Williams one time drafted a player because he saw him one time. And especially you might want to just look at, have more boots on the ground when it comes to high school, when it comes to international, when it comes to JUCO, just because even though your model is telling you something or you're drafting on traits, you still might want to get to know the young man, or you still might want to see in person what's the swing like, what's the pitch, what's the delivery, that type of stuff. Basically blend the two. And that's what I really liked about this article was one scout basically said, why can't we just blend these things? And I agree. The Dodgers were ranked as very scout friendly. They have Andrew Friedman, who came from Tampa, obviously running their front office. He's very forward thinking, very analytical driven, but they still are very scout friendly. So use eyeballs, but use them smartly. That's what I would say. Now, lost in the headline too is the Sox did finish in the top 10 in the survey for scout friendly with 7 votes. One person did vote them as not scout friendly. Wonder if that dude used to work there. And they did get 1 vote for best at identifying talent. Wondering if that dude who voted for them works there. Well, switching gears, Yoan Moncada might be staying in Chicago, although he would be playing at Wrigley. Let's discuss the Cubs' reported interest in the former Sox disappointment next on Locked On White Sox. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. And I always keep telling you, the money lines, over-unders, and spreads, they're fun to play. But if you want to win big, FanDuel's parlays, props, and futures are the way to go. Even the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl, that's usually the popular pick right now, that's at plus 350. That could triple your money depending on how much you put down. So say Kansas City three-peats and you put down, say, $10 on it. You just won $35. $1,000, that could pay out $3,500. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make the playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. I did put a survey out on the YouTube community page saying, would you like me to actually do more specific live shows? Like, hey, I will be here. I'm not recording. So I'm going to try to incorporate that more into 2025, where maybe I'll try to do that. Sorry, I got an itch in my ear. Try to do that at least once a week, or maybe 2 or 3 times a month so we can actually interact. Maybe that'll be like my mailbag sessions because, feel free to email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Got a great email from Brian asking me, have I ever met, Major League Baseball players, especially former White Sox players. I kind of described that. Yes, I have. Got to have dinner once with Mike Moustakas. I'll share that story maybe at another time. And while he didn't make the White Sox, he was at least in spring training last year. I did get to cover an Ozzie presser a few times when I covered the Brewers, and it was entertaining. An Ozzie press conference is the best because there's the off the record press conference where it was kind of understood you just don't hit your record button, and also it's because it was very vulgar, and not vulgar in the way that he was saying nasty stuff about degrading stuff. It was vulgar in just that he dropped F-bombs like every other word. So you wouldn't be able to air it anyway. And then there was the official press conference. That was where you could hit record and it was clean. So, and then I remember in 1989, it was awesome that I got to walk out on Old Comiskey Park. They actually had Meet the Players Day. They actually had a time where they roped off. You could walk out on the warning track and actually shake the players' hands and take pictures. Not with the actual players. You could just take pictures of the players. But at least you got to shake hands and you couldn't get autographs. It was really awesome when I was 7 years old. I mean, literally got to meet my heroes live and in person. Anyways, recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox or wherever they get this podcast, as the show is available on all major podcast platforms. Okay, so I'll always say that Yoan Moncada is the second biggest disappointing player in White Sox history, right behind Eloy Jimenez. Because at least Yoan had 2 productive seasons, but otherwise always hurt. And you lost him for nothing. You had to pay him $5 million to go away, especially with all that talent. I mean, the guy was once considered the top prospect in baseball, at least number 2. Gave you all sorts of promise that he could be a cornerstone player, but obviously when he got paid, he didn't really do a great job, reportedly, of taking care of his body. Also, imagine if Chris Getz had the green light to completely just rip the team down to the studs last offseason. You might have actually gotten something for Moncada. Granted, he was making, I believe, $20 million, so you would have probably had to throw in some cash, but at least you could have gotten something, because now you've lost him for nothing. And he's now on the free agent market, still without a team, whereas, Eloy, he signed a minor league deal with Tampa. But there's a chance Yoan Moncada could be staying in Chicago as Francis Romero, sorry. He tweeted recently that the Cubs are interested in him. I do think that would be a great fit, as MLB Trade Rumors points out. It would likely be either a bench role or a bridge option until Matt Shaw is ready to take over the job. And I think he does. He needs a job where he's not needed to be obviously a cornerstone piece. I think the White Sox asked too much of him. They were still asking him to be a foundational player when it was like, the guy is just too injured. He cannot be a core player. You can't count on him. But if you put him in a lesser role, or if you're just saying, look, here's a bridge option, this is your last opportunity, I think you might get a more motivated Yoan Moncada. And also in this case, if Shaw beats him out for the job in spring training, the Cubs still have a very possible good backup at third. And they've also pointed out that, if the rookie struggles, he's much better than, he's at least more talented than Miles Mastrobuoni. And Craig Counsell always seems to get the best out of guys. So maybe Moncada working for him is what he needs to get back on track. And as MLB Trade Rumors pointed out, the Cubs would also have cover in the case Nico Horner isn't ready for opening day after offseason surgery. Now, granted, he hasn't played second base in a long, long time, but he can play it. Romero, he also tweeted that the Mariners are still interested and the Blue Jays. And I think those would be excellent landing spots for him, because I don't wish Moncada any ill will. I mean, I still think he's the second biggest disappointment in base, in the White Sox history. But that doesn't mean like I didn't like the guy when he was healthy. He was inconsistent, but when he was producing, he was a very, very good baseball player. Just he wasn't there. And actually, where I'm more upset is that ownership had this belief of turning things around quickly last offseason, that they didn't allow Moncada to be on the market. And now he's lost for nothing. That's what I'm more upset about. You lost Yoan Moncada for absolutely nothing. You had to pay him to go away. And that's why I think they're motivated. And I'll keep saying it. That's why I think they're motivated to trade Luis Robert Jr. before opening day. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the offseason. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. I'll be back tomorrow to discuss what I wanted to discuss today until I kind of read Luis Robert Jr. trade rumor to the Blue Jays. So I'm pushing back what is kind of the 5 common themes of the White Sox offseason. And also, I'm going to make the case for why Ozzie Guillen's number 13 should be retired. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion regarding the Toronto Blue Jays being a possible trade partner for Luis Robert Jr., the scouting industry telling us what we already know about the Sox talent evaluation, and Yoan Moncada possibly going to the north side. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at ToddJW, or at Locked On White Sox, or you can email me at LockedOnWhiteSox@gmail.com. Have a great day. I will see you tomorrow.